All right, so preseason power rankings. The preseason's over. It's the season now. So let's talk about the power rankings and who, from 1 to 32 has the best chance of winning the Super Bowl. Just so you guys know how this works a little bit, I've explained this on my podcast versions. In fact, if you've listened to the podcast, you already know where these are going to be. But it's nice to have it kind of all in one video, and I can talk about it in a different way in a power rankings format. So that's why I'm doing this. But basically, the way it works is I have sort of a war formula. It's not precise, but it's pretty good. Basically, I rank each team's every position group for each team, tier 1 through tier 5, and then I see how many wins that typically gets you using data from the past 10 years. So again, it's a bit complex. Don't worry about the complexities of it. If you're more interested in that, I have videos on this channel that explain that. I believe the best one to watch would be how much does positional value matter in the NFL? So find that one. But anyways, let's just get into the power rankings of it all. And we'll start with the worst and then work our way up. All right, so here we go. Starting with 32, it's the Houston Texans, of course. And also, I should just explain this chart real quick. Should be pretty self-explanatory, but the team, obviously that's what team it is. D stands for defense, O stands for offense, K stands for kicker, and then the coach. The coach will actually be in the negatives or the positives because the coach is a bit arbitrary. The other stuff I have actual data to back up. The coach is legitimately just an educated guess, so that might not exactly be the case. But you see, in this scenario, there is it's nothing too surprising, I don't think. The Texans, Jets, Eagles, Lions, I think those are the teams that people probably would have as the bottom 4 teams. Maybe not the Jets, but again, the real strength of the Jets, I think, is going to be Zach Wilson. Now, the receiving core is interesting to me. It's definitely something I could see taking a jump, but my issues with that receiving core is I would just need to see it first. And if I haven't seen it, I'm less likely to give you, a higher grade than if I have seen it, which some of these other teams I have. So, a couple of zeros. You will see some zeros in the kicking category. It's rare for the other categories, but you do have a couple of defensive zeros with the Lions and Texans. Number 28, you have the Jaguars. Again, makes some sense. They're a little bit better than, these other teams, but they're not the best team in football. Also, I believe this is clear, but the all the way to the right, that is the total wins they're projected to have at the end of the season. So again, 27 and 26 are a bit interesting. Panthers and Falcons, I think, are a bit lower than some other people would have them with, both of them almost identical, just, not even 0.2 of a win apart as a, 5 to 6 win team. And again, you look at it, a big part of it is neither of their defenses are great. You also see that their coaches don't have a lot. You're going to notice that rookie coaches, it was all where I put them in my 1 through 32 coach rankings. So for a team like the Falcons, I like Arthur Smith, but again, I haven't seen it, so that's why it goes down. There's some wins to be made up there if, it goes from a scale of minus 0.8 wins to plus 0.8 wins. Number 25, the Cincinnati Bengals. Their offense also just a little bit better, nudges out the Panthers and the Falcons. So that's kind of where they're at. Defense also a little bit better, not massively, and their coaching kicking situation isn't ideal, but they're still in that same group with the Panthers and the Falcons. All right, next 8. This is where things get a little bit interesting. So 24, I have the Bears at 6.27 wins. I think people are a bit excited about the Bears, a lot of it due to Justin Field, who is legitimately exciting, even if you're not a Fields truther like I am not. I still think that there's, excitement to be had there. However, we can't, look past some of these issues. Their offense is basically Allen Robinson trying to make everything happen. And they have a good running game as well with David Montgomery. But the offense does leave something to be desired right now. And with Andy Dalton starting, that doesn't help a ton. Their defense has some value, but the corner position really cannot allow them to get too much higher. And then when you factor on losing some points for the coach, I don't see them as a great team. We also have the Miami Dolphins, which are another team that I think people will be upset is this low. But again, I don't view this as, well, hey, they won 10 games last year and they added talent, so now they must win 11 games, right? That's how it works. Not exactly. The reality is, now, I will say this, I ran the numbers for last year as well. The Dolphins were a team that vastly outperformed their last year roster according to this. So maybe they got lucky last year. Maybe there's a flaw in the system and they'll be good again this year. That's the hope if you're a Dolphins fan, is that I made a mistake, not that they were lucky last year. But a big hit with the Dolphins is they're one of the worst offensive lines in football, and I had them as a tier 5 quarterback room. If Tua can get up to like a tier 3, there's some wins there and they could potentially push for a playoff spot. But those are ifs, and like I said, I want to see it, so that's why they're lower. The Giants are at 7.28 wins. I think there's some excitement for them as well, but again, I do think that their defense might be a bit overrated, and I think that, again, Daniel Jones is their quarterback, so that's not a great thing, along with some offensive line issues. That's why they're where they're at. You also have the Arizona Cardinals, a team that, again, they won 8 games last year. I have them just below 8 games, although there is an extra game this year, and I have factored that in. Cardinals offense, very good. I have Kyler as a tier 3 quarterback. Maybe he can take the next jump, become a tier 2 or even a tier 1 quarterback, but as of right now, that's where I have him. And for them to make the playoffs, he might need to take a big jump to make that happen. The Raiders, another team where I like their offense. Their defense leaves a lot to be desired. Maybe under a new coordinator, that could change things. These are, we're getting to the fringe playoff teams right here. So you're almost there if you're the Raiders. The Chargers, actually very similar to the Raiders. They're a slightly, and I do mean slightly better version of the Raiders. They lose some points with the new head coach. I haven't seen him yet. But I mean, you look, they're literally 1/20th of a win ahead of the Raiders. So those two basically in lockstep. And how about the Dallas Cowboys of, the team that always goes 8-8 seemingly in the year where you can't go 8-8? I have them estimated for 8.51 wins. So the closest team to 500, of course, is the Cowboys. That seems to check out. Basically nothing under defense. I mean, barely more than 0 wins, but they do have a really good offense. So that's kind of where the dichotomy comes in. Of they're an odd team. Meanwhile, the Broncos, a very balanced team, so they get a little bit higher. They do have one of the better defenses in the league. I value coverage a lot in this system, and that helps Denver. It also helps that they have a solid receiving core. It's the quarterback position. They need to get. I would say that if they get even if they get tier 4 quarterback play, they have a real shot at the playoffs. I think tier 3 could be enough. The question is just, will they get that out of Bridgewater? All right, so next 8 here. You have the Indianapolis Colts at 16. Also, I should mention, you see that there's little hash marks next to some of those teams. Those are the ones that would make the playoffs if this was the way it worked. Because, again, it's not exactly top 14, just given the way that, AFC and NFC is different. So Indianapolis, not a playoff team if this were to hold, but they're right there, only a half win away, which at that point, luck will take over and they could easily end up getting there. Again, a complete team. I had Carson Wentz, I think that he's a real wild card, and he's someone who I had him as a tier 3 quarterback. He could end up being tier 5. He could end up being tier 1. So very much a wild card there. Good defense as well. Although I would say, they are built a little bit line heavy. I would like to see them really get a better receiving core. That's kind of my biggest issue with the Colts right now, which is why I have them as a fringe playoff team instead of a definitive playoff team. Number 15, the Patriots. I actually ran these numbers 2 months ago when I first did this chart. I ran these numbers with Mac Jones in mind. I just assumed he would be the starter early on. He ends up being a starter before even week 1. So it worked out well for me in that regard. Again, they get 0.8 of a win with their coach. That helps a lot. Very complete team. Good offense, good defense. Nothing elite, but just being good enough should get them to 9.5 wins and a playoff spot if this system holds. The Steelers, relatively similar, actually. I mean, you look at across the board, they're almost identical. A big question for Pittsburgh, they have a tier 3 quarterback as of right now in Ben Roethlisberger. Maybe he could take a next step, be a tier 2 guy. Maybe he could fall off a cliff, so maybe a bit of question marks there. Also a bit of question marks at corner, but they're a good team. I have them in a playoff spot. The New Orleans Saints, who still have a good offense. A big chunk of this is Alvin Kamara, who I value a tier 1 running back very highly. That's what the analytics say, is basically running backs don't matter unless you have an elite guy, then they matter a lot. So that helps them a lot. I do consider Kamara an elite guy. I also think that their offensive line is great. The quarterback I had it as tier 4. I like Jameis. I'm not sure how great Jameis is, but I think that he's solid. And tack on a very good defense. And also, yes, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. You are going to notice The good offenses are going to add a lot more wins than the good defenses. That's just what the analytics say. The reality is the best offense scores more points per game or points per drive compared to the worst offense than the best defense prevents points per drive from the worst defense. The San Francisco 49ers, who I had as 12, I felt like that was a bit high on them. Niners fans not impressed. I had them as a, 10 and a quarter win team. I think that's pretty good. Their offense is pretty good, and I have it with Jimmy G in there. Maybe Trey Lance takes over and can add a couple wins to that total with the quarterback. I value quarterback highly. I like the receiving core a lot. Very underrated. So there's stuff to like here with the 49ers. Again, I do value coverage a bit more than defensive line. So maybe there's some people that would have their defense as better than I have them, but that's where I have them. Number 11, the Baltimore Ravens. The issue with the Ravens really is their receiving core. That's their biggest issue. I think that's what's taking them. If they had like a tier 1 receiving core, this is a Super Bowl winning team, I think. That's how close they are. There's wins to be had there that they don't have. Other than that, love this team. Love Lamar Jackson. Love the way they build their defense. I just think they need to work on the receiving core. That's really it. Buffalo Bills right there. Again, another 10-plus win team. Also worth noting, I did this with Josh Allen as a tier 2 quarterback. He was number 6, only the top 5 get to tier 1. If you are a Josh Allen believer, then you probably, add an extra win to their total. Just go on that. It would actually be about like 1.2 wins, something like that. So there you go. Number 9, the Seattle Seahawks. People are low on Seattle, but the reality is, the way I see it, they have DK Metcalf, they have Tyler Lockett, they have Russell Wilson. That's a ton of wins right there. You look at their offense, over an 8-win offense. Yes, they rely on a few guys to have a lot of success, but those guys are really good, and those are guys you can rely on. So the rest of the team does leave something to be desired, but if you're going to be top heavy, you want to be top heavy in those positions, which are the most important in football. Finally, top 8. Yes, I do have the Washington football team here. They are one of the best defenses in football, over 4 wins. They are also over 5 wins with their offense. I have Fitzpatrick as a tier 4 quarterback. I think that feels fair to me. They have a good receiving core. They have a good offensive line. So there's a lot of stuff to like about this Washington team. And so, again, I'm not sure, could they challenge Tampa Bay? That's where things get tough. But they feel like a clear division-winning team, and not like last year when they, were kind of the best of the worst. I think they feel like a top 4 team, or, in this case, a top 5 team in the NFC, only because, yes, I have the Minnesota Vikings ahead. Although a caveat is they were another team that they underperformed massively last year. And I think that might be an issue of coaching. I think that they don't get the value out of their offense that they should get. You look at their offense, it should be loaded. I just don't know how well they can extract that value. I feel like they didn't do a great job last year. I like Dalvin Cook, but use Dalvin Cook to set things up. The ideal way to use Dalvin Cook is to get teams to fear him and throw over the top, similar to how you see Tennessee do it with Derrick Henry, which I don't know if they've done an incredible job of, but if they do, I do think this is an 11-win team and could contend for that division title, although, as you see, I do have Green Bay winning it, even though I don't have as much value with them in the offense, just given the fact that they don't have quite as good of a receiving core, and they don't have as good of a running back, in my opinion. But they have a better defense, they have a better kicker, and they have a better coach. So that's where it comes down to. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers still great, Devontae Adams still great as well. I just think they could use some talent next to him in the receiving category. Number 5, the Tennessee Titans. So for the Tennessee Titans, they're completely top heavy. They're completely about offense, but they have the best offense in football, according to this, by 0.1 wins. The Browns are right there. But again, Derrick Henry, good offensive line, great receiving core. They added Julio Jones. That helps. Ryan Tannehill is a tier 2 quarterback, in my opinion. So a lot of stuff to like about that offense. Defense, we'll just move on. Number 4, Rams, another one of the teams where they might be the most complete team in football. Probably Cleveland, them or Cleveland. I mean, these are 2 really good teams because the Rams have a ton of talent, and their defense just loaded across the board, and their offense is really good. Stafford's a tier 2 quarterback. They have a good receiving core. They have a lot of talent right here. So I like their offense. I have them as a 12-plus win team right here. Number 3, the Chiefs. This might be, number 1's going to be a surprise. I get that. The Chiefs, though, if it makes sense for them to be here. I think the 12.4 wins, that feels right. Offense loaded, right? One of the best offenses in football. I have it as the 4th best offense. I think their defense is a bit weak. I don't know why they let Rashad Breeland walk. I thought he was good last year. Their corner position worries me a bit, and that's a position I highly value in football. I think it's probably the most, it's the most important position on defense. That's what the analytics say. That's what logic says if you watch it with a trained eye. But still, they got Mahomes, got Tyreek Hill. You have Travis Kelce. You have Andy Reid. This is going to be a very good team. They're going to be a tough out, no doubt about it. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers I have slightly ahead of Kansas City, and I also have them with a better defense. So slightly ahead of Kansas City in the offense is what I meant, and then a better defense as well. 2 wins better, in fact. So they're a team that the one area of concern I would have is I'd like to see their corners be a bit better, but they still have a good cornerback room. So it's not like it's a bad corner room whatsoever. So there's a lot to like about Tampa Bay. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl last year for a reason, and they're only 0.4 of a win away from who I have as number 1. And yes, that is the Cleveland Browns. The Browns do have the best offense in football other than the Titans, in my opinion. And again, they're basically the same. And both of those 2 teams, they get that 2.5 wins from a tier 1 running back room. I really do think that Nick Chubb is one of the real underrated players in the NFL. The guy's a monster. And you have Kareem Hunt backing him up. I mean, that's just unfair. While I do have Baker Mayfield as a tier 3 quarterback, there is room for improvement there. And I have him as a tier 1 offensive line and a tier 1 receiving core. So that's really good news for Mayfield. On top of it, this revamped defense where they put a lot of work into that secondary and I think have made it really good. This is a loaded team across the board without too much flaws. The only thing you could really argue is maybe an inexperienced coach, but I still like Stefanski. Guy won Coach of the Year last year, and that's probably their biggest hole right now. This is a loaded team. I do have Cleveland as number 1. Let me know what do you disagree with in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.